the last few I've done, we'd start talking, and then I'm like, why have I not hit record yet?
Yeah, might as well start, even if it's the
Yeah,
settle.
chit chat it is what it is. What's up, Internet? Welcome back to the podcast. Today with me are my great old friends, Luke and Hannah Sollie. Known you
Yeah,
guys for so long now.
yeah. We've
Like,
had a lot of life together.
oh yeah, well, you guys have been
Like
married, what, 10 years?
11.
Yeah,
11?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, I
And then I
mean,
knew you before, like, I don't know, I was what, 20 when we met, probably 19 or 20.
something like that. Well, yeah, I don't know. I was probably 21,
Yeah.
22. Well,
Oh,
because in 2013 was when I went to YWAM and you
yeah.
guys got
oh yeah,
engaged.
That's
So,
right. And then you
yeah.
came home and we were basically married. I don't know.
Yep, I show up and you're like, "Oh yeah, we're getting married." I'm like, "Oh, well, I mean, I can't
You,
say I didn't see it coming, but
yeah, it was quick.
yeah. Yeah, but I love it. It's funny. Yeah, well, actually, you guys should you guys should tell that story to the people. Like, it was
Oh,
so funny because I go away. Well, first of all, we meet Luke, and we're already, me and David are really good friends with Hannah already. We go to One Thing conference, and Hannah starts disappearing a bunch, hanging out with this hooligan.
it's hooligan.
such a hooligan.
It's funny. And then next thing you know, he moves to Indy, and we become buds, and you guys get married in like no time flat.
Yeah, it's so true.
I
It's
know.
like we just knew.
Yeah.
We knew we wanted to be married.
Hey,
Yeah,
when it's right, it don't take long.
Yeah,
yeah,
so true.
I know. It's so funny looking back at it because I'm like, it seems so like I don't know, just I like I wouldn't counsel anybody to do that at all.
Yeah.
But still, but at the same time, looking back, I'm like, man, I didn't know anything, but I trusted that God was with me at the very least, you know. And so,
Hmm.
and and yeah, it just seemed like it was like good in God's eyes. And so, yeah,
Oh, it
Yeah.
was. It was. One thing that, I mean, and my brother even shares this sentiment with me sometimes, but we get to talking about you guys and we both agree that you guys sort of embody a peace within your marriage and like a clear uh depth and love that goes beyond like I think what most people assume marriage to be, you know? Like everybody's like, "Oh, you probably button heads and fighting all the time," but I feel like you guys were always that couple that were embodying that whole like we're on the same team thing.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, we've always
That's
loved it.
so true. Oh, thank you. Yeah, we totally, I mean, we have our share of
Yes.
disagreements and we butt heads and that's not fun. But yeah,
yeah,
I feel like early on we like, I don't remember. Do you remember when there was a point where, I mean, in the first few months of marriage where we both realized, wait a minute, we are on the same team. And so it changed arguments and deep discussions, all those like changed that
yeah,
for us. Yeah.
yeah. I think there was kind of a progression of like we came into marriage knowing that we didn't know anything to some degree,
Mhm.
which I think was helpful,
Yeah.
and and then knowing that we wanted to be like we wanted to have like a really peaceful, loving marriage, and so obviously that's a good start, but there's like distance between the ideal and then what actually is going to happen. And so I think both Hen and I like were like we grew up like kind of wanting to be peacemakers and kind of being peacemakers and peacekeepers sometimes in a wrong way, but um yeah, I think like going into it with that in mind, we were like, okay, we're not going to just let ourselves get angry at each other and try to like get it our own way. And so I think that was really helpful. But then, as you learn, it's like you can have the ideal motive, but then you realize, okay, some of this is actually just because we like we're avoiding conflict, you know? And
Okay.
but then some conflict comes in and we're like, okay, this is good to some extent, but it's not healthy.
Hmm.
And so then I think fairly early on we're like, it's like the conflict would never be so bad, but at the end of it, it always we were just like, okay, we're sorry. Let's figure out how to like do this better,
Hmm.
And um and then pretty early on it was like just the basic understanding of like when the conflicts were like worse than other times, it was because, at least for me, I was like, I felt like um, in some way I was being attacked, or in some way I was being like delegitimized or not cared for. And I realized, and I'm sure it was the Lord, I realized, like, wait a minute, like, she loves me, you know,
Yeah.
like, for me to just like appropriate these things toward her is like one unfair and likely like rather likely in my mind not true.
Hmm.
So I think that was kind of a big turning point, like at
Hmm.
least for me. I was like, man, I realize I get into self-defense mode and then it's kind of like I make her my enemy and like appropriate these motives towards her that like are probably unfair things to appropriate
Yeah.
like in the direction. So yeah.
Yeah. I've talked about this a ton, and uh,
Yeah.
part of it is because I've said this so many times on the podcast, but like the class that we did beforehand, it gave us that language of like, you're on the same team, your emotions don't mean I'm the bad guy, and like recognizing that, being humble enough to recognize that, like, hey, I might be believing a lie, and that doesn't mean that, like, when you come to me with something, it doesn't mean that I did something wrong. It just means that you're feeling or perceiving something, and now we can work through what that is.
Yeah.
Yeah, so true.
It's the key.
And I think like when I like, okay, I remember the first time I like trusted Luke enough to like let myself actually be just angry and not like yelling at him or like well, it didn't like come out in a really bad way, but I was like really upset. I don't even remember what happened. I like you know how these things are. You like rarely remember the thing that happened, but you're like arguing about something. But I remember when I trusted him enough to know like okay, he's not gonna like I don't know. Like our marriage is still gonna hold strong even though I'm like really upset right now and like I'm not just like shoving it down or like being passive about it. I'm gonna like we're gonna finish talking through it and like dive into it. And I think that changed things for our like I don't know. I think it changed things for our marriage too. Like not running away or like not physically running like
Right.
emotionally running away or like being passive about it but being like okay I'm I trust that he's going to be okay and I'm going to be okay for me to actually be angry and I trust that our marriage is strong enough to be like dive into it and we're not going to just like shove it aside or put a band-aid on things, we're going to like go
Yep.
deep into it. And yeah, I think that was maybe even I would say it was like maybe even 5 years, 4 or 5 years into our marriage before I got to that point where I felt like I trusted him enough. And it was actually it sounds so silly, but the moment I realized I like trusted him enough to actually dive into things like that is the first time it was like late at night and we'd been like arguing and whatever. And I remember it was the first time I let myself go sleep on the couch because I was afraid that he would be so like feel so abandoned if I like went and
Mm.
slept in the room. But I was so upset and I like we had like paused things but hadn't resolved it all. And but I was like so upset still. I was like, I cannot sleep next to him.
Mm.
And so I like went out, slept in the living room because I like just needed space. And I um but I think that was like kind of this pivotal moment of like, okay, I trust him enough that he's gonna be okay. I trust our marriage, I trust that our marriage is strong enough for me to actually make that move to just like I need a minute alone, I need to like yeah, anyways, I
Mm.
don't know. that all makes sense. But
No, yeah, that's interesting. That's funny because, well, 5 years would you guys have been out of Indy by that point?
yeah, it was actually during our DTS. It was
Uh,
like, yeah, DTS. Oh man, I remember that being it was just challenging and different
Yeah,
things came up in our marriage like during DTS.
I think we had more arguments like during the lecture phase of our DPS than we had the previous like
Oh,
5 years of marriage.
yeah.
that's insane. Well, I
Yeah,
mean, I guess you're under in a pressure cooker in a lot of ways.
I think that's what it was. Everything was just getting like stirred up, and I
Hmm.
don't know. God could totally used it, but
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean the schedule is like pretty demanding
yeah,
and like the homework was fairly demanding. Like it would have been
yeah,
fairly demanding for a single and then it would have been like a little bit more demanding if we were married without kids. But having three kids, so it's like yeah, the schedule is like you wake up really early, you go the entire day, you have dinner, you like spend time with the kids, you put them to bed, and then you work on homework, you know?
yeah,
And
yeah,
it's like, it's not like unheard of, like people work hard, but it was like, it was a lot kind of emotionally because it wasn't just like we were just engaging like facts and figures, like we were doing kind of heart work,
yeah.
you know?
hmm
And so, yeah, it was definitely, it was definitely funny. Like
yeah.
once we realized like how many arguments we had had during lecture phase. It
It's so
mostly just
silly.
became a joke. Like,
Yeah,
okay, like
so silly.
this is probably a good thing. And none of them were, it's like, I think one thing that was important is like giving ourselves permission to like trust each other and like be honest. Like, doesn't give us ourselves permission to like be hurtful,
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
I think there's a huge gap between an honest conversation and then one where you like say painful jabs.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that wasn't happening that way, thank goodness. So
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
that's good. I mean, there's always the necessity to have at least enough humility to not take pot shots at each other and get loud and aggressive.
I
Yeah.
know.
That's
Yeah, it's a lot of self-control. You're like, I'm gonna keep myself in line and be honest, but be really careful not to. Yeah,
let your
you just
anger get away from you.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, because it can happen.
And I think like the difference between like something being helpful versus like something feeling like helping you feel vindicated in the moment are like two very different
Mhm.
things most of the time.
Yes.
And so like I think any motive that we would have to take a pot shot is like literally just like trying to like put salve on some sort of anger or whatever we've got going on.
Mhm.
But it doesn't help at all. Like it literally just makes things worse.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so yeah, thankfully we learned that really early on. I think
Mhm.
even before we got married, like that had been something that was clear to us. Like pot shots are kind of like off the table,
Yep.
Mhm.
And yeah, I think just having like a basic like this is we're not touching this, like we're not going here
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
is helpful.
So I guess before we move on from this, are there any? Because I've talked about this a bunch of times, but like, are there any tools in particular that you guys learned or anything that have helped you to navigate conflict?
Mhm.
I
Anything
think
in particular that you use, or even just like weekly check-in type things that you do, or anything like that?
oh yeah,
I think like
not
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 like
like that,
that. Yeah, no.
but I think some major tools that like we've learned that have been helpful is like and this is pretty basic, but it's easy to forget like when you're in a time of conflict, it's just like we're both different. And so things that she would say that like growing up, like that would be an insult, or like if you were to do this, there would be potentially some sort of like I'm trying to get you motive behind it. Um, Recognizing that like we grew up in two different contexts, like and
Two
like the
different
culture.
family dictionaries, basically.
Yeah, yeah, and
Yeah.
the
Yep.
culture and like the things that are insinuated by this and that, like very different in a lot of cases. And so I think we realized like that, like And that was a tool that helped, like, okay, just because I'm reacting to this thing doesn't mean that in any way this is what she meant by it. But
Yeah.
if somebody else in my life would have said that, this is what it would have meant.
Mhm.
And then I think for Hannah, she was really helpful, like because I like want to talk things out right away. I'm like, let's fight this out and let's just argue this.
Let's find this
Like
out.
like I would like to think I have enough humility to be able to argue things through and like come to like a good conclusion, which I try, you know.
Yeah.
But but yeah, in my mind, like if we're in a time of conflict, I'm like, okay, like let's do the battle of the arguments. Like who's got the most valid argument here? And I just want to go for it until like all of the arguments have been exhausted, and then pray that I have enough humility to actually accept a, a good conclusion. And but Hannah like wants to go away and process it, like just pray about it and just think through it on her own. And so
Yes, we kind of had to meet each other in the middle a little bit. Like I learned to take less time to think about it, and then he also met me in the middle and gave me space. So like I need to go think because I can't think
mhm,
here in this conversation. I actually don't know exactly what I'm thinking or feeling. I need to go be alone for a minute, and then we can come back. And so yeah, even like more recently, sometimes we'll get into something and I'll be like, hey. I I know that I'm not like, processing well with you right now. I need space. Can we like reschedule this for the afternoon? Like actually like put a time, like at 4 o'clock we'll talk about this again.
Yeah.
And that's helped a lot because we both know we're coming back to it. We're not like dismissing this conversation and, pretending like never happened. Um, yeah, so that's
yeah.
helped a ton.
So I think like the principle behind that is realizing that we have two different needs when it comes to conflict,
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
and not like one is the right one. You know? And so I think that's helpful
Mm-hmm.
because it's really easy. Like I've thought about this a lot, and just in regards to like Christianity and faith and belief, like it's really easy to think that you have the right way. Like because every like we're trying to honor God and love God, get to know God, find out what God's ways are like. And so we're like trying to find these like definitive truths.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
and I think like because that's the underlying like propulsion of our heart, then when it comes to even things like this, like typically we try to reduce it down to like whose way is the best way. And then you have all sorts of arguments as to why your way is the best way. I think realizing like this was kind of early on in a marriage when I realized that like, oh, maybe my way isn't the best way for everybody. But it was
Mm-hmm.
kind of like hard to come to grips with that because I was so like, no, I think this is going to create the best conclusion. And so yeah, I think that was a major
Mm-hmm.
tool that was helpful. Like, okay, maybe my ways aren't the best ways.
Yeah.
Maybe they're the best for me, but
Hmm.
they're not the best for her, you know?
I have another thing that's just really helpful, and this is such basic like conflict resolution stuff, but it's like I try to focus pretty I try really hard to focus on like where am I at and what am I feeling? And so when I'm sharing with Luke, I'm like, hey, I, when you did this, I felt like this, or could you do this differently because of how it affects me, rather than saying you're bad because you do these things,
Yeah.
you right, you have, like not making those types of claims because I have no idea why he's doing what he's doing. And maybe it's like very simply just grew up doing it that way. And um yeah, but like giving him the benefit of the doubt to speak up for why he's doing something
Yeah.
that's a certain way. And yeah, so I try really hard to just focus on like, this is how I'm doing, and I'm not, jabbing you at all and saying why I think you're doing that. So
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yep,
Maybe him doing that isn't actually him trying to poke at me. He
yeah,
may
yeah,
just not have, not have meant that at all.
right. Or maybe it's not, this selfish motive. Maybe it's actually like he's doing this thing because he thinks it's like best for our kids or something like that. And and so yeah, yeah, asking a lot
Yeah.
of questions.
Yeah.
Try. I don't know if I'm good at that. I want to. I like the idea of asking a lot of questions.
Hmm.
Yeah.
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 Oh, I'm sure it gets even harder as time goes by to not make assumptions based off of history.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. As you
Yeah,
get
it
to know
does.
each
Actually,
other.
I feel like it was
Yeah.
kind of like it was easier at the beginning, though there's like the cultural differences between our
Mhm.
families, and how we grew up. And then it kind of like I feel like it's kind of bubbled, and now we've
Yeah,
realized
it goes in and out, I think.
um okay, those assumptions that I made that I like made based upon history actually were wrong oftentimes.
Yep.
So I think
Yep.
it's helpful, like it's like you have to realize that you're wrong really to make it any sort of change in your life. And so, unfortunately, like there's typically mistakes that happen in between before you realize that
Hmm.
you're probably wrong. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's been helpful. The time's been helpful because it kind of like it increased the amount of like potential assumptions and probably at least I'll speak for myself, like the actual quantity of assumptions being made. And then I'm like, okay, I don't think that the fruit was good out of those things, and like I can just like stand firm on my and what I think I've extrapolated, or I can just decide to like trust she's probably not lying to me.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah, no, I know.
it's like
Well,
the thing is
also,
like we like our motives can be subconscious, and so that can be
yeah,
difficult too because you're like, well, maybe you just don't know what your motives are. And or
right.
maybe you're like
And
lying because you're feeling like triggered and you don't like you can't admit to yourself that that's actually what your motive was, you
Mm,
know. There's actually lots of
there's
different
a lot of things.
options.
Or like I knew, like sometimes I would think there was something going on in Luke's heart, and which is so, you got to be really careful with that stuff. But like then you can easily get into this like, oh, but if I show you that this is going on in your heart, then I will help fix you.
mm,
So careful. Like it's so easy, especially being like a Christian, you love Jesus, you have, we believe in prophetic stuff. So we have like we believe that Jesus shows us stuff. It's so easy to get into that place of like playing God for people and being like, I'm seeing this in you and I'm going to help you to see it. And then it's going to fix you, and that's like, that is God's job.
yep.
It's not your boss's job. It is not other people's job. It's like, it's his work between him and Jesus. It's like, and if he goes and asks for help for someone, that's fine. But like, yeah, it's just, you got to be careful in marriage not to be like, I'm helping fix you right now. So
I think I want for a moment at least to spend a minute on this. I know that you guys have done a lot of, I guess, like working through like your past and stuff alone with the Lord.
yeah.
Um, and I feel like you guys are relatively unique in that. I mean, I guess I've done sort of a similar thing in previous years, but I know you guys were doing it way before I felt like I really did a good job at it. But I guess maybe if you'd like to speak to the humility and intentionality it takes to like look at yourself with the Lord, like with honesty instead of I feel like most of the time, even me back in the day, I'd be like, oh yeah, I'm great in a lot of areas and stuff, and then but I know you guys have done a lot of work in healing from things that like whether it be family issues or like just how you sort of grew up surviving, I guess, in some ways, or like you learned how to move through the world and you've worked through a lot of that. Is there anything that you guys would want to speak to that? Because I'm thinking about a little bit the fact that culture's pushing heavy, counselors. And I think counseling is great. I think going to a counselor is great for the majority of people. But then there's sometimes like the need for that one-on-one with the Lord and being honest in that. And so is there anything that you guys want to speak to in that? Because I know you guys have done that a lot in your past.
I love this topic. Yeah, I mean, let's see. I mean, I think it I mean, you have to start with probably recognizing your own problems. You can't you can't like grow, change, heal unless you recognize you need the growth, you need the change, you need the healing, you know. And so first just recognizing that, and like recognizing we all need that. We come, you know, we come into a broken world. We are broken people. And yes, we're like saved by, you know, Jesus saves us and everything's covered. But there is that well, like a sanctification. You know, there is the like working through like learning how to live in the kingdom is probably, I like that term for it. Like learning how does like how does the kingdom function, not the world, you know, how does the kingdom function? And so like learning to live in that. And you know, Jesus promises like I've come to bring life and like life abundantly. And so like that's what I want to live in. And like I, that, you know, that's my dream. Like that's his dream for us, and that's what I want to live in. And so, anyways, yeah, when I was uh, thankfully like I recognized when I was pretty, I mean, when I was in my teen years, even before meeting you, like I recognized, oh man, I have some issues, and I didn't really know exactly what. I just knew like I struggled with an eating disorder in my teen years, and so
Hmm.
that was a good not that was not a good thing, but it was a good warning sign. Like I was like, oh, there's something wrong, you know. So what is going on? And at the time I didn't really know who to ask for help, and so I wish I had. Like now I have a lot more people, a lot more community around me, a lot more people that I trust. I've learned to trust people. There's a lot of things that like, you know, if I were younger and had those things, I would have gone to people for help probably. But
Hmm.
um yeah, at the time I didn't have that. And so yeah, I learned my mom actually taught me to like sit with Jesus and like talk with him. And I mean like that's been the most, I mean, that's probably the most pivotal thing, most life-changing thing for me. Like I have a few like big moments in my life, but that's probably the biggest one is just like
Yeah.
learning to hear Jesus, learning to talk with him. And yeah, she helped me. She just like really gave me really basic tools for inner healing. So like asking Jesus, like, you know, starting with the physical problem, like, okay, why am I struggling with like, I don't know, you know, the self-image stuff or something, you know, that came with the eating, or the eating disorder came from that stuff, you know. So why am I struggling with that? And then just going deeper and deeper. And Jesus just began to walk me through like where where I was at, you know. And um I had a lot of things like I really wanted, and I felt like this need for control. And so there's this one thing I can control, my image or something, you know. And there were multiple things. I wasn't the only one, but that's a good example. And I had a lot of self-hatred. I was really hard on myself. And
Hmm.
um I'm glad I didn't control people, but I was really like controlling of like myself, and I needed something to control, and I was angry at myself. And so I, you know, so there was just a lot of things. And so Jesus began to come in and like he like rewrote everything for me. It's like even my like history. One of our YWAM teachers that we have is they do inner healing, and they do an inner healing week for us at WOW Nashville, or they did. And she talks about how like Jesus came in and rewrote her history, and that just feels like the best way to put it. It's like even things that even the ways I was raised, it's like Jesus came in and like, you know, maybe I felt misunderstood as a child, or something like that. And but Jesus like came in and showed me that he knows me, and he understands me, he actually made me, you know. And so began to rewrite like just my whole identity and who I am. And um yeah, so now like now I'm pretty aware of when I'm like something's coming up in my heart, like that I need to work through. And so I can tell like, oh, okay, I need to sit with him and do that type of work, not just like sit and pray or sit and talk to him or whatever, but I actually need to do some like work inside. And so yeah, anyways,
Oh,
it's
that's great.
good.
That's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Dude, Luke's done this too.
Yeah, I think Yeah, just with the idea of inner healing in general, I think, like when I was younger, I like struggled really badly with uh addiction to pornography and masturbation and just like sexual sin, lust, like
Yep.
um, and when I can't remember how old I was, maybe when I was 19, 19 or 20. It's like, I'd been on this roller coaster for years of like struggling with this. And like in my mind, like this was my only problem. It's like you have these things that are like obviously not okay.
Yeah.
And and then it's like you become hyper fixated on them.
You're like, if I can just fix this one thing, then I'm gonna be good.
Yeah,
Fine. Yeah,
literally. Yeah.
I know.
That's exactly what I was thinking. I think it's pretty common.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
And you don't realize that there's so much underneath. Like that's the thing. It's like it like hide this one, the surface problem hides all the other stuff going on that, the roots of it.
Yep.
So
Yeah. And I
yeah.
think like in my understanding at that point, like, yeah, I had no idea of what was going on underneath. Like I literally just thought it was like all I could really like apprehend was like I'm addicted to this thing. I don't know how to not do it. Like I and and I remember like one day I was actually just walking downstairs like in my family's house because I was doing college and working when I was 18, 19, 20. And and I remember it's like now looking back, I'm like, okay, this is like God gave me a revelation. At the time, I didn't realize really that it was God. I just knew that it's like I was confronted with something that was true. And I realized that like it was the first time I ever realized I didn't have to be stuck
Hmm.
in like in pornography and masturbation, this like sexual sin cycle that I was in. And it's like I really realized it. It wasn't like I just had a fleeting thought. It's like I realized that actually the truth was that I didn't have to be stuck.
Hmm.
And, and it was like a weird moment for me because that was like contrary to everything that I'd felt for years and years and years. And and then finally I was kind of confronted with this like do I actually lay hold of this thing that now all of a sudden it seems like I'm having a revelation that this is true, or do I ignore it? It was like I was in this like moment where I'm like, this is a big moment. It wasn't just like I'm thinking about two different potential realities. It was like I was being confronted with the truth. And then I was like, I just sat there for a second because I was like grieving the loss of this. Like this thing had like ruined my life. But I was like grieving the thought of losing this thing, and it was like I was like weirded. Like all of a sudden, I was like, "What? Like, why am I sad at the
Hmm.
thought of losing this thing?" And then I realized it was like another thing. It wasn't just like a thought. It felt like a revelation from God. Like, oh, it's not. It's like this entire time I've lied to myself or been lied to by the enemy, whatever it was, that like I couldn't stop doing this thing. And I realized like it's not that I can't stop doing it. It's that I couldn't imagine my life without it.
Hmm.
And that was like another thing where I was like, whoa, this is like I'm being confronted with the truth. And and then like the next thought was like, okay, now that I know these things, like it's like I had the power all of a sudden inside to never do it again.
Hmm.
And and I was but then it went back to that initial thought of like grieving, but if I never do it again, like I like what will I be missing out on that like something on the inside of me is longing for.
Yeah.
It's like sin's evil, but there's like it attaches to some sort of longing that we have.
Yeah.
And so
It's like going, but how will I cope in the future? Even though you don't realize it's coping. You're like,
yeah, I
but
had
how?
no idea. Like I didn't
Mhm.
have the even the language of coping.
Yeah.
And so I was just like, okay. And so I started grieving this once again. And I realized like I literally realized I was like I would be just living a lie, like lying to myself if I choose to go back and act as if it's one that this is like okay, which I already knew it wasn't, two that I have no choice, and three that this is somehow better for me. Like I realized, like being confronted with the truth, I realized that like it's actually better if I never do it again.
Hmm.
And it's like you can just like try to reason that out, and obviously it's like anybody would be like, oh yeah, of course, you know. But it's like on the inside, it's like it's not so much of an of course, you know. But in this moment for me, it was like a clear of course. My life would be better if I never watched porn ever again. And yeah, and it was just that. Like that's all that happened, and I've never watched porn ever again.
That's
And
awesome.
it's like
Isn't that crazy?
it's not that I've like grit my teeth and like tried to hold on to this belief. It was like I was confronted with the truth, and it was like a gift of God, you know? And like I just responded to the truth.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I would be foolish to not like actually accept this thing that's being given to me. And yeah, it's crazy. It's like, yes, I'm still had to work through the roots of the sexual sin, like the lust and like the thinking, like, yeah, just like objectifying women, which like pornography is the very essence of that, you
Hmm.
know? And so like those things were still those things were still things I had to work through. But like this thing that I saw as like this is the one worst thing in my life. If I didn't do this, everything would be better. It was like it was dealt with, but it wasn't because I was like strong or did anything that was like that can point to me being good. It's just like I was confronted with the truth. It was like just the gift from the Lord. So I think like going back, like that was kind of the journey of like inner healing for me,
Yeah.
is like realizing that like I'm literally lying to myself, or I'm letting myself be lied to, and I'm just deceived. Like I'm just tricked, you know.
Yeah.
And then when I was like encountered by the Holy Spirit, like when I was 21, almost 22, like in a way where I'm like, well, I was actually at school. Like kind of the first part of that encounter was like I realized that I'd lived as a Christian my whole life, gone to church, done kind of like just the week in and week out of like this is the duty of a believer, you know. And I realized that like I would never actually really given my life to Jesus, and I didn't even know what that meant. And it's like I'm 21, like judging my friends. Like actually the moment happened because I was judging my friends because they were like partying like crazy on the weekends,
Yeah.
like super trashed, like sleeping with girls in college. And then you know on Saturday, Fridays and Saturday nights, and then they would go with me to church on Sundays, and or I would go with them, or we'd go as a group, whatever it was, you know. And it was like the moment actually I was like really judging, and I like in the moment of me judging them, it was like all of a sudden again I was confronted with the truth. And the truth was that like they didn't, to some degree they didn't know better, but like and they're like kind of living this, they're living this kind of double life ish to some degree. Um, but I knew better, and like and though I wasn't going out and partying and like you know being promiscuous, I was like I was still refusing to like actually surrender my life to God. And so it was kind of like the next step. It was like, oh, like being confronted with the truth again, realized like it's actually that I was deceived and I was believing a lie or like reinforcing a lie. Even sometimes things that I knew to be lies, I was reinforcing them because it served something of the flesh, you know?
Yeah.
And yeah, so then when I was like, okay, Jesus, like you can have everything, I realized like, okay, there's a lot that's there's a lot that I've already realized that I'm believing that are lies. So now I need to like just learn the truth. And
Yeah.
I don't know how many lies I'm believing, and I don't know how deep they go. And so yeah, that was kind of like all started it. And then I realized like that God, like, the scripture says that we're transformed by the renewing of our minds, which like you have like that presupposes that your mind needs to be renewed,
Yes.
and
Mhm.
the truth setting us free presupposes that there's untruths that are keeping us bound. And so I think it was just those like simple, like scriptural realities that I'm like, okay, this must be life then with God,
Hmm.
is coming to grips with the things that I believe that are actually lies and that are not serving me. They're not serving God. They're not serving the people around me. So yeah, that's like the very essence of it. And then coming to realize that Jesus wants to like he actually wants to give us revelation and understanding and wisdom. He wants to speak to us in ways that will like deliver like our hearts and our minds from these things that are lies so that we can actually like live in true reality, which
Yeah.
is the one he lives in. All of us live in some sort of distorted reality, but
Yes.
God is the only one that lives in reality, actually,
Yeah.
coming to like an awareness and understanding of like his reality, which is the only right one.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of that speaks to the identity piece too, of like believing that God really is who he says he is and that we are who he says we are, you know.
Yeah, so true.
I love that. All right, well let's step into some of the more like you guys have had crazy faith in so many ways similar to me and but in different ways and that's I just love talking about some of this stuff. So
Or
yeah,
reckless, maybe reckless.
maybe maybe wisdom of the world to make foolish the or
Yeah.
the foolish of the world to you know
Oh wait, make fires. Wait.
yeah however that goes. But okay, so it's funny. I mean, I think about this often about how we all tried to move to LA.
God. Oh my
So
word.
you guys were relatively recently married. I had just done my DTS at YWAM, and my brother and I decided to try to move to LA ahead of JT.
Yeah.
And then it didn't work out, and I come back, and you guys decide to do sort of the same thing, and you're
Oh man, I feel like we were so like at that time, I don't know, we had been reading I mean, I had been reading like Heidi Baker books and like oh man, Todd White, sorry, I could not think of his name for a second. Todd, I'd been like listening to Todd White and watching what were those documentaries like
Father and Light stuff.
Father's Lights. Yeah, those there's a few of those. I don't remember how many. And so yeah, I was just, I mean, I remember just being like hungry to like go on this radical adventure with the Lord and like do crazy things and let the Lord work and see the Lord move and do ministry and all of that. And so I don't know, I feel like we were like, Luke and I, we were both like begging Jesus for an adventure like that, like tell us where to go. We'll go anywhere, Jesus. We'll believe you for anything. And yeah, that was yeah. That's where we were at.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And then you guys go to LA and like us, you ended up coming back. And it's funny because I remember having a dream like right before that or something where a bunch of us were gathered up and you guys left first and then I left. And I was like, that doesn't make sense. I'm leaving first.
That's
Well,
so fun.
needless to say, years later, when we're all back in Indiana, you guys were the ones that ended up leaving Indiana first,
Yeah.
hilariously. But yeah, so you guys were looking for sort of this like life of radical faith, which obviously eventually led you guys to doing your YWAM and all that stuff. But I'm curious, before we get into you moving to YWAM, what was it like for you guys then, being the type that wanted to do sort of the radical, to come back to Indiana and then you guys sort of settled in a bit
Yeah.
because you had a kid on the way,
Yeah.
but you had to settle down for a minute. And what was that season like for you guys in your process, and how did that eventually lead you to doing your DTS at YWAM Nashville?
Great question.
Yeah. Well, I think just going back to like kind of the hunger for radical faith, like it's like, especially when we're young, and I'll like qualify this because we're supposed to remain zealous.
Yes.
But when we're young, like we're surrounded by, all of our like late teens, early 20s, like counterparts, and like we're experiencing things like with the Lord that we just didn't know about. And they were new and exciting, and it's like there's kind of, at least for me, like when I was encountered by the Holy Spirit, it's like I grew up in really good churches, but I never had anybody explain that type of experience with God to me. And so, what happened with me, and I don't think that this needed to happen. I think it happened for various other heart reasons.
Hmm.
What my response to that was like, I don't know who to trust because I had grown up in really good churches, but and had heard awesome testimonies of God doing amazing things, but I'd never heard anything like that necessarily,
Yeah.
and especially not by anybody that was close to me. Um, and so, like my response kind of was like, I don't know who to trust, and it wasn't like I thought that people were dangerous. It was just like, okay, if this thing that was like the most transformational moment of my life with God happened, and it's so
Meaning the like Holy Spirit like
yeah,
fell
like
in
Yep.
being
you.
in by like yeah, being encountered by the Holy Spirit
Yeah.
in the way that it was like I didn't know like who I could talk to that had a frame of reference for that, or would
Mm.
even like believe that it was a legitimate encounter with God. And so my response to that, though I don't think this was a mature response, but my response to that was like, I don't know who I can trust, and even people that I think are trustworthy, I'm not sure how many of them would try to dissuade me from like doing the things that God's actually calling me to do.
Right.
And you know, so like, and I'm not advocating necessarily for that. Like there's a lot of like conversations that we could have related to that thing.
Yeah.
Like
Um,
we made mistakes along the way. So just
yeah. And
this is
so
totally the topic, but like there's
yeah,
definitely mistakes we made
but I'm just
along
like
the way
prefacing
with
it
all
with
that.
that,
Yeah.
like, and I have a lot to say, kind of on both sides. And I think God, like as He grows us up, He like matures us, and we
Yeah.
begin to have like a broader understanding of things. Whereas, like, for me, when I was younger, I had like a pretty narrow, like, okay, like God's with me, He loves me. I believe that God speaks to us like through the scriptures and like by the Holy Spirit, like to our understanding. And and so it's like God's with me, like God, let's do something like this. Like I wanted to live the way that I saw people living, like in the Gospels and the Book of Acts. And um and to me, I'm like when I started reading the Bible, because it was like I got encountered by the Holy Spirit, and really I started reading the Bible seriously for the first time. I'd read it like at various points and seasons in my
Yeah.
life, but not seriously. And I started seeing these same sorts of things happening to other people in the scriptures, and so I was like, there, it's all over the
Mhm.
Bible. Like, why is this like? Why did it feel like an anomaly to me, like something that was happening that I didn't have context for, when in reality it's all over the Bible? And so, anyway, so yeah, I was just kind of set in this like, okay, then this must be it.
Hmm.
And so then I'm in this like, all right, God, we want to do something important, really at its like at its foundation. Like we want to do something
Mhm.
important. We want to be willing to like step out in ways like that somebody that wants to remain comfortable wouldn't be willing necessarily to step out in. And I see in the scriptures like the disciples and the apostles like stepping out in these ways, and so let's go for it. That's kind of like the foundation of everything. And yeah, so when we moved out to LA, it was like I was feeling like God was like speaking to us to move out there. And even to this day, like it did not turn out the way that I expected it to at all, but I still think actually that God was speaking to us to move out there.
Agreed.
Um,
Yeah.
because of how just things like lined up in a way that like I was not even aware of until after the fact, you know. Um, and so we went out there, but it was like completely different than we expected. Kind of we expected like we'd go out there, it would be so clear and obvious why we were out there, and we'd make some sort of like connection that was so clear and obvious, and then we would like get plugged into some ministry that was so clear and obvious, you know, and and then we would be out there for a long time because why would God like bring us out somewhere,
Uh-huh.
have us out there for a short period of time? You know, it was kind of my rationale. So, anyways, well, we went out there, and it was actually like amazing. The trip out there, I was like, God, this is so fun. Like we're doing this thing. And then we get out there, we take some stops along the way, and that was amazing. We get there, and um like we go straight to the prayer room, and I'm kind of like my expectation is like, okay, like God's gonna bring somebody to us, we're gonna connect with them, and they're gonna be like, oh, like, you know, like I've been expecting you type of idea, you know, because we're just listening to these stories, and I'm like, okay, why not, you know?
Yeah.
And um, but anyway, so we're there for one night. I'm actually staying with my uncle because on the way out there, he lives in LA or lived in LA. So staying with my uncle, and he calls me on the way out there. He's like, "Hey, you can stay with me if you don't have a place to stay here." And then so I stayed with him that first night, and it was kind of a huge disappointment to me because I had all these expectations of like what things were gonna look like. And we stayed with him a second night, and it was kind of another like I really enjoyed being with my uncle. This is nothing to say about my uncle, but it like I had these ideas of what this was supposed to look like, and and then we ended up connecting with now a good friend of ours that you had connected with when you were out there, and and she was like invited us to come in and move in with her for the month, and so it turned out actually like a really cool connection, and we were out there for a month, and then it turned out to be closer to like 5 weeks or something like that, but maybe the
I think
fourth
6 weeks.
or
We
sixth,
were
yeah,
there
sorry,
six
six
weeks
weeks,
total. That was
but the fifth
I think that
week,
was longer than we were, to be honest.
yeah. And I was still kind of like I'm kind of like an eternal optimist, and so I'm still like holding out a lot of hope, like God's just kind of testing us, you know. And so like something really clear and obvious is going to
it's
happen
gonna
out
come
here.
through. Yeah.
But we did things in a really immature way, and so we were like
Yeah.
trying to like tie up all these loose ends from back here in
We kind of just like
Indianapolis.
left Indy. It had things like we did, yeah, we just like didn't close stuff up well. And so
Yeah,
like we still had an apartment here in Indy that we were paying rent on. And there were just things like that where it was like, oh man. So yeah, we've learned a lot along the way that was like, oh, we shouldn't do it that way again.
yeah.
But
Right.
I'm glad.
Well,
But
and
we,
that's part of it too, is like a lot of people would look at that and it would be easy for either me and Joseph or you guys to go, "Oh, we just failed at that." But the
Yeah,
reality is like first of all, the Lord confounds the wise all the time. Like
yeah,
he does things in ways that is so counterintuitive to what we would think. And it would be easy for us to go, okay, well, we failed at that and maybe we didn't actually hear God. But the reality is we did hear God. We did do the thing. And though it didn't look like what we or other people would expect that to look like, it was a lesson and it was a tool in the tool belt. I mean, same thing with when me and my ex moved to Australia. I really felt that like the Lord was coming through on so many different things. And then we end up back here and I'm like, what the heck? But there were certain things that I wouldn't have experienced or processed had we not gone there and come back. And then obviously everything happened after that. But like the Lord proved himself in some serious ways there that allowed me to cling to him when the divorce was happening and things like that. And the experience with LA and everything else, like all those experiences along the line have led me to a point where now, if I take a leap of faith, I know that I know that I know that like it's gonna be okay. Even if it doesn't look the way that's expected, we're gonna be okay. And even if, even if most people would be like, well, that was stupid. Why would you do that again? Like, why would you jump out in faith again? It didn't work right last time. I'm like, well, no, it worked exactly how it needed to. And it taught me that even if I jump out in faith, I'm gonna be okay. So I can do it again.
Right.
Yeah,
It's so good. That's such a good point. Yeah, because like he's got us, like God, he meaning God. God is like got us, and he like adores us, and it's like he's always with us. He's never gonna leave us, and like he's got things covered that we never like. He knows, I mean, he knows everything all of eternity, but he's like he sees all the steps ahead of us and what we're gonna decide and choose, and he's like got us covered no matter where we go. And
yeah,
yeah, it's so true. I love the like when we think, oh, it's you know the moving out to California, we're gonna, make a big impact in history or whatever. Like we have these grand ideas, and it's like it's actually about, I mean, it could be multiple things, but it's also actually about our relationship with him. Like we're learning to trust him. We're learning his character. Like we
hmm,
didn't know him before, or we didn't know him in this way before. And so, yeah,
yeah.
it's really good.
Yeah, like so being out there for the 6 weeks or whatever, on the fifth week I had a dream. And we're
Have
out
we
there
told you
and
this
I'm
dream?
like I'm
I
praying
think so.
like
Yeah,
God,
I think we
like
probably have.
I trust you, like we're out here, like I'm sure you're gonna give us insight as to why we're out here and who we're gonna connect with, how we can have some sort of income while we're out here, because at that point we didn't have any income
And we hadn't
whatsoever.
been doing sport raising or anything. We just like left everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so but I had a dream, and in the dream, it was one of the shortest dreams I've ever had. In the dream, you just walk up to me, like we're on the street somewhere, it's nighttime, it's like a parking lot or something like it. And you walk up to me, and you're like, well, looks like God's doing the same thing with you as he did with me. And, and like,
Luke woke
I
up
was,
so
I
mad.
was so mad. And here's
He
why.
woke up and he was like, it was not from Jesus. That was
Literally,
not the Lord.
so this was my rationale. I think I've told you this before.
Yep.
I was like, Thomas went out to LA because he was sick of Indy. And like this is my perspective. Because he was sick of Indy. And like, but I didn't know all the backstory of you feeling like God was calling you out there, or at least I didn't remember at the time in my pride and bitterness. But
Pride
but
and
then I was
bitterness.
like, but we came out here like on the word of the Lord, and there's no way like we're
Oh,
heading back. Like this is totally just like a test. Like we're not supposed to head back. We're supposed to persevere. And so I woke up and told Hannah, I was like, babe, I think I had a demonic dream. I think the enemy was like trying to, and, because I was
okay.
like so stuck in like the way that I'm interpreting like how much impact and how amazing this is going to be has to be the way.
Yeah.
Think when we ended up like we prayed into it
Yeah.
then obviously from that point on, and we're like, oh, actually we feel like we do need to go
We
back.
did need to go
and
back. Yeah.
and there's people that ask us that like, hey, like, you know you missed it, like why do you think you missed it and stuff like that. And initially I was kind of like bothered by it, but now I'm just like, it's okay, like if people think we missed it, like it wasn't anything that I was like,
And we did miss some things. Like I don't think like we heard the Lord, and we made a bunch of assumptions
yeah,
around those things. And so there were things we totally missed. Like we
yeah.
thought we were going to be out there for years. Like we missed that.
Yeah, I think what I like walked away with mostly was like, okay, God, like I really genuinely think God had us go out there, and I don't think it was just like we were being like unwise and zealous, but I think I had no concept of like God caring so much more about our development and our character, and
Mhm.
recognizing like where we're not strong, where we're not wise, where we're not like um willing to like seek counsel from those around us.
Mm.
And so
Mhm.
there's like a bunch of different things that like I was just like, it's just me and Hannah and the Lord, and we're gonna like set the world on
And we're
fire,
gonna
kind of,
conquer the world. Yeah.
and it's like, but I didn't really come to grips with the idea that maybe that's not what God wants, you know? and I was still in this place of like, well, who do I trust to not dissuade me from being faithful to what God's actually calling me to do?
Yeah.
Kind of like maybe I'm on my own.
Hmm.
Maybe I have to just discern on my own if I try to bring this to other people. Maybe in their supposed wisdom, they'll convince me not to do these things that God actually wants me to do, that like for him matter that I do, so it's like all of these different things that like now I look back and we've had years to be able to process it, but it's like, oh, God was like teaching us some good hard lessons. Like I I've thought of this more and more recently. We've talked about this more and more recently,
Hmm.
that God, like, he's a father. It's like he chose to call himself father. Like he could
Yeah.
have called a number of things, but he's primarily, like in the scriptures, calling himself father. And um at least in the gospels, and Jesus refers to him as the father, like over and over and over and over
Hmm.
again.
Yep.
And it's like what I didn't realize was that my when I got encountered by the Holy Spirit in this like zeal for loving God and the zeal for doing what's right in God's eyes, regardless of whatever reproach I might have from others because they think that I'm being dumb, like that was good. There's a goodness to that, but um, but wisdom takes time.
Yes.
Like God's not just like dropping wisdom into our lap. Like you see in the scriptures, and we experience this in our day-to-day lives, like God's primarily teaching us through experiences. And oftentimes those experiences don't go the way that we expect them to go.
Yep.
So yeah, I think
And
realizing he's like a father
I'm
that's
sorry.
like teaching us. Like we're little baby infants. Like I
Yeah,
was super zealous, but I was a little baby. And
yeah.
not in a demeaning way, but like actually
Mm.
in a mental like capacity as a
Hmm.
baby. And he needed to teach me these really basic things because in my like babiness, I didn't know them yet, really.
Yeah, it's so
So
true. And like I almost feel like the going out to California was like we think about developmentally, if we're like baby Christians and then we're child Christians, whatever. It's almost like going out to California was this coming of age. Like it made us wake up. Like, you know
Mm.
how in tribal contexts or a lot of other cultures have like coming of age moments, it's usually around like 13
We
or
got to bring
something
it
like
back.
that. Yeah, I gotta bring it back. So yeah, I feel like in some ways, like going out to California for us and where we were at developmentally was like that. Like we woke up, it made us recognize, oh man, we need some maturity, we need some growth. Like yeah, so it taught us some hard lessons, but in like a God is fathering us, not like oh, he was disciplining. It wasn't like a discipline at all. It's
Yeah.
like to recognize, oh, we need to get stronger in this area and we're weak here. And we need to learn how to do this because we have no idea how to do that.
So
yeah,
then from there, you guys are back in Indy, you find out you're pregnant, and you guys are like, okay, well, did at that time you think that you were going to stick around Indy for as long as you did? Because I mean, it was
Oh, yeah. It's
it was a
fun.
handful of years.
We were back in
yeah,
Indy for another 5 years. Yeah,
yeah,
I
I think
guess
Probably
five.
so.
something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we were in Indy for like 5 years. Yeah,
Yeah,
so when we got back to Indy, we felt like Jesus said, like, put down roots.
Mm.
And which had been totally like we were before that we were kind of in the like we will go anywhere. We kind of had this feeling that we're called to ministry and mission, so we kind of probably will go everywhere.
Okay.
So we kind of laid that down. We're like, all right, Jesus, like we're laying down this call to ministry and we give it back, kind of surrendering all of it.
mhm.
And we felt like you said, just grow, put down roots here. And so we lived like we were going to be here forever and or be in Indy forever. I don't know. A few years into that, we started getting words about going to Nashville and things like that. And yeah, I don't know. That's such a long story. I don't
Well,
know.
no, yeah. Well, like I know that during that time, the whole community aspect that we all had was I think probably incredible for all of us
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was. Oh my
in a whole
goodness.
lot of ways. It definitely taught me what community should look like in some ways.
Me too, oh my word.
Yeah, I think it was so pivotal for, or speak for myself, like for me developmentally to like have a community that's
Hmm.
like just wanting to get to know the Lord, wanting to understand that like we're not an island and
Yeah.
that we're supposed to like
Hmm.
have committed friendships that we're kind of living in not some sort of transactional way, but like living as close and often as we can with one another.
Hmm.
And yeah, it was huge for me. Like I don't it's like I understood how important community was, but I didn't even understand what it was supposed to look like. And so we were just going for it, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And so, but I
it
think
was great.
like,
Oh man.
looking back, I'm like, oh, we could have developed things way better. But I think what it provided for all of us to some degree in the group was like just like group that's like you can come in and out
Yeah.
and be a part of like
Hmm.
family,
Yeah,
to some extent. It's like no matter how much or how little you feel like you can commit, it's like, yeah,
you can come back
it's good.
here. Yeah, I know. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was so sweet. Like, I mean, we had our young adult group, um, even before Luke came in. And so, and you guys were like my family.
Yeah.
And when my family wasn't, available or there or whatever. And so, um, yeah, but it was so cool. Like when we moved out to California and then we were brought back or we came back, it was like we came right back to family
Yeah.
and it felt the best. And so we were kind of like, I think also like being away for 6 weeks in California, we didn't really have, not, I mean, there were people around us and whatever, but we didn't have the depth of relationship with them. So it didn't feel the same community wise. Then coming back made us recognize, like, oh man, this is what we need. We're
Yes.
made to have this. We've got to have it. And so putting down roots didn't feel like this horrible sacrifice because we'd already lived a few weeks, it was only 6 weeks. We lived 6 weeks without it. And we're like, oh, we're desperate for that again. And so, yeah, it was really sweet just coming back into the community. And
Yeah.
yeah,
So you laid down the what you felt like was the call to missions for a while. What
yeah.
did you feel restless about it much, or how did you like? Was that a process at all?
Yeah. I mean, I think I felt a little bit restless, not in like a, we have to get back to it right now, but I, when I was talking to like friends of friends and like looking at jobs and whatever, um, I like wanted to be really honest about what my commitment was. And so I was like telling them like, hey, kind of our goal and what we feel called to is like to be in like full-time ministry. And just so you're aware, and kind of in my mind, I'm like, I want this to happen now.
Yeah.
So, so when I'm
Yeah.
like trying to communicate with my like would-be bosses, I'm like saying these things, but I really have no idea. But in
Hmm.
I think in my mind, like it could happen at any moment. And so, yeah, I think there was some sort of restlessness in that, like communicating that with the desire to like be honest and open, but also like don't know when, if ever. And I began then to like I was working, like normal jobs, landscaping, window cleaning, like all these different types of jobs, auto detailing, snow removal, like you name it. I was working for a few different people that had a number of different small businesses. And
I feel like in that season, those few years, that season was like learning to be faithful, like
Hmm.
really good. I mean, that's not the only, you learn like 100 lessons per season, and sometimes you don't even know you learned something until a few years later and you look back like, oh, I learned that there.
Yeah.
But one of the big things we learned was just being faithful. And I feel like for me, it's like I I don't have a hard time like viewing my life as a mission field. And so living here and or living in Indy, I felt like this is my mission field right now, and
Hmm.
I don't know if I'll ever go to the nations or I don't know what that's gonna look like or if it'll ever be. But right now, like I'm gonna love the little neighbor boys in the neighborhood and
That's
uh,
great.
my home open for anyone in our community, you and everyone. There's a lot of people, and so our home is open anytime for people. And um, yeah, so I feel like I was that satisfied that like desire in my heart to be doing ministry stuff because I felt like this is my ministry right now.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and oh god,
and I think
no.
for me, like I I began to realize, like, I was working all these different jobs with different people, and there's some jobs that I was working by myself for quite a while. Maybe like pretty soon after we got back from California, I worked a job maybe 8 or 9 months, and then ended up like needing a job that paid more.
Yeah.
Uh, so, or maybe it wasn't even 8 or 9 months, but it was like a friend of a friend, and then I got a job that paid more, and so I worked that job for the better part of 2-ish years, and I was mostly by myself, and which for me, like in some ways was nice, but in some ways was really difficult because I love being around people.
Yep.
And but then when I finally started working with people, I realized that I like, maybe a couple years out of having gotten back from California, I realized that like I couldn't help but tell them about Jesus.
Mhm,
And so I was just like, driving in work trucks or like working on a job with guys. And like, it was just like God would open up doors to talk. Like, people would always start asking me questions. Like, I'd have coworkers, like,
mhm,
I'd be a couple days into a job, and my coworker came up to me, and he mostly didn't speak any English, but he asked me in Spanish, and I speak enough Spanish where I could like speak English Spanish mixture to him, and he understood enough English. And he just asked me, he's like, "Are you a Christian?" And it was like things like that would happen to me all the time, where like
Hmm.
coworkers would, like, ask me questions about
mhm,
philosophy or my beliefs, um, and then people that I was doing jobs at their house, they would ask me questions, or it was just like the opportunity opened up for me to ask them a question. I realized like, man, like I was actually really struggling in at this season of my life. Like this was a major, like, things are coming up in my heart moment in relationship to like trusting God's character. It
Yeah.
wasn't that trust that God existed, or trust that God speaks, or trust that he's close and sees everything. Like that wasn't the question. Like I was really grappling with like, do I really trust God's character? And which seems like just on like pure rationale level seems like a really foolish argument, like, or a foolish question, but it was a real question that I
Yeah.
had. And so I tried to dismiss it as foolish for a really long time until I realized like this is a real question that I somehow haven't come to grips with.
Hmm.
And
You can like get past the question until he actually let himself ask it, and
yeah,
begin to talk to the Lord about the
Exactly. You can't deal with what you don't recognize.
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So it was a time of development,
Yeah,
essentially.
so it's like I realized that it's just in my heart to share the
Mhm,
gospel. It's just in my heart to tell people about Jesus. Like, no matter where you put me, I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
And I realized like, oh, that's just part of me. I'm like, not, it's not because I'm jealous. It's not because I'm awesome. It's just like I can't help it.
Hmm.
I think there's something that God put inside of me where like I remember back when I was a little boy, like I would talk to people about Jesus when I was a little boy, and I like didn't know anything about Jesus really, other than the little bit that I had learned in, like Sunday school and stuff like that. Um, and so I realized that, so that was like kind of important, and I began to wonder, like, maybe like I'm able to have these like amazing like relationships and conversations with these people that I work with that would be like kind of impossible otherwise, other than the fact that I'm working with him day in and day out. So maybe this is what God meant. We felt like God said that we were called to ministry. Maybe this is what he meant, if we're right about that. And so I just began to be settled, like, okay, God put it in me to
Hmm.
share about Jesus. And and then also all these other questions about God's characters. Like I can't help but tell people about Jesus, but then I'm like struggling like on the inside like horribly when I'm by myself, you know? And and so then also realizing, okay, there's lots of like unanswered lies that have been internalized in my own heart that I haven't dealt with and I don't really know how to deal with.
Yeah.
Um, like I had gotten past these like major sin, what I thought were major sin struggles, you know, and but now it's like that didn't fix it. It's like now there's a lot of other more difficult things to reconcile going on the inside. So yeah, it was really cool just to see how God used that season of like we're putting down roots. Maybe we'll just be in Indy for the rest of our life, which is great if that's what God wants. He knows better than we know. And then to like, oh, it's just in our heart to like for Hannah to open up our home and to like be a presence in like the lives of the neighborhood kids that are playing in our side yard, you know.
Hmm.
And then it just can't help, you know, to be in a place where we like can't really help it, but just to share Jesus with my coworkers and then oh my goodness, there's all this crazy stuff happening on the inside of my heart that I'm wrestling with that I don't know how to handle. And yeah, it was just cool. Like God kind of just like lumped it all into to one little season.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just looking back, you know, it was horrible in the moment. It was horribly confusing, you know.
Yeah.
But looking back, I'm like, man, God is so kind
Hmm.
to have done it the way that He did it. And
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I feel like you brought missions up in the right time. Like
Yeah.
when we didn't even mean to go into missions when we moved down to Nashville. Like it was one
That's
of the
right.
it was like one of those other like faith journey things, where we were sure God was telling us to move down to Nashville. We had been praying, we had prayed for a few years on and off, like God, and like asking, pleading with the Lord, let us go do YWAM. We had friends in YWAM, and we were like, that could be really cool.
Yeah.
Missions. And so we had prayed for a few years, like, God, could we go down and be in WoW Nashville with our friends? And we'd felt like God was like, no, or not yet. And so
Mhm.
um, then when we felt like God was saying down to move to Nashville, we didn't feel like we're supposed to do YWAM Nashville. And so we just moved down to the city and we were helping with a church plant, but we didn't really feel like that was it. That was like the thing. We didn't know why we were there. Another one of those just hard seasons of like you kind of in between and you're like, okay, God said to do this and I don't know why, but I'm gonna obey. And we'd learned enough at this point to know like, okay, he's got us, and he'll show us when it's time, when we need to know. But yeah, we were only in the city for, it was either 9 or 10 months of living in
mm-hmm.
Nashville city until we moved to YWAM Nashville, and then he said, "Okay, do a DTS school and then stay in YWAM." And so it's just this funny, like I don't know why God did it that way. Maybe just to teach it, just so we could practice trusting Him. Maybe I don't know, but yeah. So then He like brought missions back up in the funniest time, and
Yeah.
yeah. So then we were at YWAM Nashville for 6 years, and now we're in the in between again, a little in between season, figuring out where to.
Yeah. Well, you guys even helped lead the school for a while, and
Uh,
yeah, that's so dope. I love it. Like, so what was what has it been like? I mean, obviously you guys, well, you guys ran one school a year, but that's like 6 months worth of the year, and then you would do support raising and all that stuff, um, and and so what was, I guess, what's some of the more like, I guess, wild things that you saw in those years?
uh, um, you have are you thinking more so in the realm of like financial provision, or are you thinking more so like overseas, like?
Maybe like overseas, because that's kind of, I guess, what people probably would think of when they think of YWAM. Obviously, there's the development phase of the DTS of like learning first 3 months, and then but then there's, you take everybody out and you just see kind of wild, crazy things.
Oh,
Maybe just a couple little things that stand out.
So cool. Uh, One thing that comes to mind that maybe doesn't feel so wild, but it's just really cool to me. Maybe it is wild, I don't know. But I feel like so we've led three schools and we've each time we'll lead the mission trip with it. So it's like for someone who may not know, it's like 3 months of training and we go through um we have different teaching weeks where they learn like who God is, stuff like dive into the Bible, things like that, and they also get practical training on um, uh, like we're gonna go overseas, so how do we preach the gospel? And so we get evangelism training or ministry training, cultural training for the culture we're gonna go into. So there's like really practical things in the 3 months of training, and then we go overseas for 2 to 3 months. It kind of depends on the school, but yeah. So then, yeah, we went on multiple. We led the teams on the mission trips as well, and so yeah. So okay, one of the things that one of my favorite things. I mean, you're walking with these students. You're discipling them and you're also getting discipled. I don't know, you learn so much when you're teaching people. I feel like I learn more than they do. But
Yeah.
the the really cool thing overseas is like just always God like somehow in his like cool God way sets things up for people to like do ministry in a way where their hearts come alive
Mm,
even if it's not the plan. Like, so we led a team to Southeast Asia, and the location we were at, it was illegal to preach the gospel, so we had to be really careful about preaching the gospel there. But our goal was like we're gonna share Jesus with people, So that's our focus. But we had to be kind of like under the radar and careful with it. And so, yeah, so we were doing a lot of ministry, and one of the girls in our group, she's learned ESL, English Sign Language, and
okay.
so it's been in her heart for a long time to like do sign language and ministry. And we stumbled upon this. We were like in a coffee shop, and we like see this table where there's like a lot of people. Like they had pulled up extra all these extra chairs sitting at this small coffee table in this cafe, and they were all signing to each other, and they're not American. They do not speak English.
Yeah.
But the girl in our team, she recognizes that they're like signing to each other, and she's picking up some of the things that they're saying, but it's not American Sign Language. And so she goes over to their table and she begins signing with them, and they're able to get by a little bit and understand each other enough. And so, anyways, it kind of that set up this ministry to like work in the deaf community while we were there in that country. And it was like nothing we had planned at all. And like we hadn't even thought to do deaf ministry. But this is like something on our heart for a long time. And so that's only one story of like many where God ends up setting up specific ministries for people that like he has, I don't know, prepared for them for a long time, and he plugs them into this. And yeah, it's just really sweet to see God plug people into ministry stuff. And so other crazy things though, I mean, we were just in Africa. We were in Tanzania this January, February, and into March. And oh man, I think that's the closest thing that I've been in, closest thing to a revival that I've ever been in. Like I would say they are in revival. Like we've been a lot of places now, and ministry is great, and doing evangelism is great, and sometimes people come to Jesus, sometimes they don't. But like people were like flooding to Jesus. Like I've never seen anything like that before, and so yeah, this year was a really cool year. Do you want to share some of
Yeah.
those stories?
So we're going to
Door to
like
door.
these villages. We're just walking, and it's like mostly deserty. There's like thorn bushes and thorn trees. It's like just a completely different climate, than we're accustomed to. And
People cook over a fire, and there's not always electricity in their mud hut.
Mm,
So that's like the
yeah,
context.
so
It's
we're
like
we're
mud
going
huts
to mud huts and
in Africa.
And they call them, or at least we were calling them, because there's lots of different languages, but we were calling them bomas, which basically means like a house compound. And
It's
so
like multiple family. It's like
Okay,
one
yeah, yeah,
multiple house mud huts in
yeah,
that little grouping.
and
Yeah.
polygamy is like really common, and
Yeah.
so like the man will have multiple wives, and then
Each
their
wife has a
children will live in
house.
their
And,
own house. Yeah.
yeah.
yeah. Okay.
And we're walking through this little opening, and we hear the guys say "Odie, Odie, Odie," and I'm like, finally, I ended up asking him like, "What does Odie mean?" And they're like, "It means knock, knock, knock." And we're like,
Because they don't even have a door to
they don't
knock
have a
on. They have like
door.
a sheet in front of their like
And so it's just like
doorway.
such a different thing, like
Yeah.
I'm thinking door to door evangelism. We're in some suburbs. We're not, going one door, we're going to the next door knocking, it's not like that. But it was amazing. It was better,
It
than I
was
would have
better.
ever expected. So we walk in, they're extremely inviting, like,
Yeah.
and like set down the chairs and stools and little stumps for us to sit on. And then
And there's their goats and their sheep are all around because they're herdsmen in the
yeah,
travel context, and so their goats and sheep are like
yeah,
there with us
yeah.
while we're sharing the
That's
gospel.
awesome.
So we sat down, and that's how we do it. I'd sit down. Our translator would be like, "Okay, you can talk." And the first time he said that, I was like, "You mean just like say anything?" And he was like, "Yeah, like they're here to listen." And I'm like, "Okay." And so then, I just started sharing like from Genesis, like the fall, sin, like all of the brokenness that happens, like God's plan for redemption, Jesus, and then the final judgment where God, Jesus is going to come back and it says that he's going to judge the living and the dead. I was like, well, I guess I'll just do all of that because they're here to listen. Like I'm not interrupting their day. It seems. Whereas, you do street evangelism, you might have 2 minutes of like somebody that might be pretty impatient that you're like interjecting into their busy day.
Yeah.
And so it was crazy. Like the first interaction I had with this woman, like in this Boma, I share like Genesis to Revelation, and with like the God's coming back to judge the living and the dead. And I was like, what do you think? Like, I asked her actually, have you ever heard this before? She was like, no. And then I was like, well, what do you think about it? And she was like, it's a really interesting message. I'm gonna have to really think about this.
Hmm.
And I was like, not expecting that, like I was expecting like, well, we believe this, and why are you trying to tell me what to believe?
Mm.
And so I was like, okay, that's amazing. And then we just asked if there's anything we can pray for, and it was just crazy, like the openness that we were experiencing.
Mm.
The next house that we went to, actually, she was like, okay, like I want to like give my life to Jesus, but if I go to church, my husband's gonna beat me.
Mm.
That was also the first time where I've like ever been confronted with that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I'm like, what do you mean like your husband's gonna beat you? And she's like, well, my husband, he believes the tribal like spiritism religion, and like it'd be a dishonor for his wife to believe something else. And so it was crazy. We're like, oh my word, just the weight of like, wow, like this is gonna cost her, you know.
Yeah.
He knows it. Like it's gonna cost her today when her husband gets home.
Wow.
And like to me,
Mhm.
that was like, man, like we have
Mhm.
it so easy in so many ways, and like our life is like so different in so many ways. Like just it just humbled me. I'm like,
Yeah.
man,
Mhm.
I've never been beaten because I decided to follow Jesus. And so yeah, so that was crazy. There's been other crazy stories, but that just kind of is an
Yeah.
indicator. Like those are our first two door to doors. And then Hannah, this other really crazy one, I think Hannah's going to share.
Mhm.
I wasn't a
Yeah, I'll
part
try
of.
to be
So
quick in this one though. But
Yeah. Yeah.
so we were working a lot with the Maasai people group, and like we've said, they practice polygamy. So, you
Hmm.
know, we'll marry multiple wives, and kind of the more wives you marry, the more status you have. Like
Yeah.
you must be wealthy, you must be, and they have to give a certain amount of. It sounds so silly in our culture, but they actually pay
Bride price.
wives by giving the cattle or giving
Mm.
goats. Like they pay for a wife, and so the more wives they have means that they must be wealthy, and so they try to marry as many women as possible. But because of that, there's if there's also a lot of widows. Like if one man passes away, he leaves a lot of wives, and culturally they don't get remarried, and so they end up being like kind of like these I wouldn't say outcasts, but they live on the outskirts of, kind of like they don't have a family, they don't really have a home. So, some of them are able to go back to their old families. But anyways, it's a huge issue
Yeah,
basically.
yeah.
And so, and then with kind of within this, there's a lot of um, like the women do what the men say. And so like if the husband accepts Jesus, the women accept Jesus. If the husband won't accept Jesus, usually the women aren't allowed, or maybe
Okay.
they do careful, so it's like it's very much like a patriarchal, is that the right word? Patriarchal um uh
Society, yeah.
society. Thank you. Yeah, society. And so, okay, so anyways, we were going out. Well, so this also provides a lot of room for like widow ministry. And so we were going out giving bags of food and supplies to widows. They don't really have a way to provide for themselves. And anyways, so I was out with the team doing that, and it was like around dinner time, and we've been told by the translators and by the hosts, like, okay, when kind of around the dinner time, that's the time when they bring their herds back into their uh, fenced in area, their shrub fenced area. And that's when they start milking. They've got to milk their cattle and whatever. And so, like, don't try not to bother them during this time. Like, that will make it more difficult for us. Like, yeah, just don't bother them during this time. Okay, so we were there. We had given one, there was a widow who lived kind of with this family group, but her husband had died, obviously. And so, um, we were giving bags of food to this widow and her kids. And we were leaving, and one of the students in our group, she's the best. She was like, I have to know if they know Jesus. Like, we knew that the widow believed in Jesus, but we didn't know if the rest of the family she was living with knew Jesus. And there were like it was a large family group. So this like Boma complex, there was like one older man that looked like he must have been like the father, and there were a lot of women around and a lot of kids around, and then there were a few other men who looked like maybe they were his sons. So sometimes like a son, like there will be a father, all the wives, and then an older son might get married and like build his houses and his wife's houses nearby. So it was a large family grouping. I'm just trying to give you context for
Yeah.
like
Yep.
a lot of kids like around. And so, anyways, the student who needed was like, I need to know if they know Jesus. And we kind of know like this is really not the time. This is like kind of the one rule. They haven't given us a lot of rules. It's really safe in Tanzania. There's not a ton of rules, but like this is kind of the one cultural rule we've been told, like try to stick to this. Don't bother them when it's like milking time. Okay. So she asked the translator, can I ask them if they know Jesus? And the translator like hesitated and was like, I don't know. And then the translator was like, and this translator is like a fiery Christian, like loves Jesus. She's very passionate. She's really cool. So she kind of, then she was like, you know what? Let's just go. Let's ask. You can ask, but like kind of be quick. So the student asked them, "Have you heard of Jesus before?" And the translator translated, and they 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 kind of all stopped what they were doing, or like maybe were still milking, but
Yeah,
like
but listening.
yeah, listening. Okay, and there's a lot. There's maybe like 15 adults, and I don't know how. It's hard to count the kids. They're all everywhere. A
Yeah.
lot of kids, and so they're all listening, and so they asked her, what do you mean, who's Jesus, and so she just shares the gospel with them. And more people started coming around. Like, I don't even know where these people came from, but they were like coming out from the mud huts, and coming out from around the fence and whatever. And at the end, she shared for maybe 5 minutes, or 3 minutes, 3 or 5 minutes. And at the end, like, she asked them, like, okay, like, what do you think? And so they respond, the translator translates and says, they say this is a good story. And so then she says, okay, the student, she says, okay, do you want to like accept Jesus and make him the king of your life or something like that?
Yeah.
And the translator translates, and the translator says they say they want Jesus. And then the translator says, hold on. And the translator's talking with them in the language. And the translator told us, she was like, I asked them, like, do you understand what this means? Like, you're giving your life to Jesus. And we didn't know there was a backstory of there's been this pastor coming to them sharing about Jesus, and they've been really like hard, they've been really like closed off.
Yeah.
Um so the translator translates back to us and says, they say this is a good story, and why would we not accept it? And so then they like the whole, so then they all come around, like this whole family, and I don't know, there's tons of people around now. And they're like, they're all there, and the translator kind of takes it away. And so the student isn't
Yeah. Yeah.
talking anymore. The translator like takes it away and has them like pray this prayer to like receive Jesus, make him the Lord of their life. And so they're all like praying it, and they're holding hands, and some of them are like crying a little bit, like the older one, like the old men. And because the men accepted Jesus, like then all the wives like were accepting Jesus too, because they're like,
Yeah.
this is our what our tribe is doing, tribe, I call it a tribe, but a
Right.
tribe is we are following Jesus. And so, anyways, it was like the most one of my favorite experiences of just like Jesus broke in. And um we were when we were leaving, so we had a translator with us, and then we had a pastor with us, and a Messiah pastor. And the Messiah pastor told us that he's been like really praying for this Boma, this family people group, or this village family. And he said that the Lord gave him a verse. I wish I remembered what the verse was. Probably have it written somewhere, but gave him a verse while we were there. And the verse was like, is there anything too hard for God?
Mm.
Like, and so, because he was kind of like, there's no way this family's ever going to come to Jesus. And so, yeah, it was really cool. And it kind of gave me new perspective on like, I don't know, just the way God uses, like, we could all do ministry in our hometown, and that's amazing, and that's super good. But there's something God does when people come from other nations, other countries, and like, there's somehow, I don't know why he's like softens people's hearts to someone from another culture in a way that I don't know how to explain other than he does it. And so like missions is so important,
Yeah.
like, and it's important to do ministry in your hometown. I'm not making that little or anything, but like, I don't know, he just does stuff when you go to other countries
Yeah.
and share the gospel, and you have this reception that you don't have maybe in your own hometown, kind of like Jesus, not being received in his hometown or something.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. There's just something. So
Yeah, that's awesome. So you guys have stepped down from the Nashville staff and you're currently fundraising and getting ready for your next step, which you're not entirely sure what that step is going to
Yeah,
be. You just
yeah,
know that it's probably still with YWAM. So,
yeah,
um, if people did want to potentially like reach out and maybe support you guys or whatever, how could people do that?
yeah. Well, just kind of to give it to preface it, like, um, yeah, kind of our hope is to stay in YWAM. We really like YWAM for a number of different reasons. Like, YWAM has its strengths and weaknesses, but like we fit pretty well in YWAM.
Yeah.
Um, just the nature of how they do things, we really appreciate it in a lot of ways.
mhm.
So that's kind of our goal, is to stay in YWAM. Um, Obviously, like being in YWAM, it kind of opens up a lot of connections to you, and so there's various places that we've either been, well, all that we've been to. That we're like, oh, this could maybe be a good fit for us. The foremost one we're thinking of right now was where my sister's been at for like the last 11-ish years. I'm not exactly sure how long she's been there, but um, yeah, so that's kind of what we're going for.
We're right now we're in this funny season of like we 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 really want to stay in missions long term, and so God's been, I don't know, we've been praying a lot about like how to have longevity in missions. So
Mhm.
like we're back in Indy right now, at least for the summertime, and we're working on like support raising. And there's a few things like we want to start pursuing in order to have longevity. Like, I don't know, like we're thinking we're in this brain space of like, okay, what's a way for us to like have, one day we're gonna be old and we're gonna have to retire and, decide we need to retire or whatever. And so like how do we like have something going, like some type of an investment or something where we're like able to store up some money for that portion of our life because we live on support. All our money comes through support. So right now we're here meeting with some mentors and like trying to get a game plan for some of that stuff. And we have some cool things like we're talking with mentors and stuff.
Mhm.
But yeah, it feels sweet to be in the space of not just like living like we've been living like paycheck to paycheck for so long, which is such a faith thing, and I've been
Yeah.
so thankful for that season. But now we're thinking, okay, we need to think a little bigger here, like okay,
Yeah.
long term. So yeah, we're growing up a little bit.
Yeah, if we
And,
ever need to take care of our parents, like we want to be in a position to be able to help take care of our
mhm,
parents along with our siblings, like and actually be able to contribute instead of just being like, okay, well, we don't have anything saved up, there's nothing we can really do.
mhm,
We want to have some stuff saved up for our kids, like if they want to pursue education or even just like getting married, like being able to like
Yeah.
out for the wedding and
I feel like we could probably spend some time on an episode talking just about the realities of this stuff.
yeah,
I know
We
it's so
absolutely we should next time. That would be great.
good.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah.
yeah, so
Yeah, but yeah, as far as like how people can give to us,
yeah.
probably the easiest way is like reaching out to us. I
Yeah, I
don't
mean,
know,
I
is
think
that
reaching out to us and even seeing like asking questions, because I think one thing we really want to do is like have like transparency in what we're doing.
yeah.
It's like we need to have. I mean, we live on a very very small income, and God's been really faithful to provide for us, and so
Mhm.
it's not like we have money at the moment, but we want to be, just like we said, we want to be building money so that we can not just be financially stable
Mhm.
in what we're doing like vocationally, but ministry wise, but so that we can be wise for the future. Yeah, so
Yeah.
like reaching out to us like through email or through phone call would be great. So I could maybe post my email or something like
Yeah, I
that.
can put it all in the description and stuff and then tag you guys or put it in your Instagram or whatever so that, if people want to follow along.
Yeah, because we really want the like
Yeah, we
relationship.
want the
Like
relationship
we
too.
obviously we need money, but the relationship's far more
Yeah.
important. If somebody like just wants to give, and like we have some links that we could give for that. So
Yeah. Maybe we'll
um,
post something. I don't know. But
yeah, we have a like a tax deductible, a ministry that like receives our funds so that they can
mhm.
be tax deductible, and it's like an actual ministry fund, just for our lives. And then obviously we have the basic ones: Venmo, Cash
Yeah.
App,
Yeah,
PayPal,
yeah.
and
Beautiful.
it can be tax deductible. But yeah,
Well, awesome. Well, I love being able to chat with you guys about all this stuff. And like I said, we could definitely do another episode about and going deeper into some different things. So I would love to do that if you guys have time in the future. But man,
We love
love you
it.
guys. Thanks for coming on.
You're
love
the
you too,
best.
man. This has been fun.
Yeah, awesome. Well, internet, thank you for listening. If you've made it this far, yeah, you can kind of get hold of them if you want to through the links in the description I'll have. Just for housekeeping, I am trying to stay off of off of the internet more often than not right now, and so I'm not posting as much. Not that the algorithms really are beneficial to anybody these days very often, but if you like what we're doing on this podcast, share it with your friends. That would mean a lot. And so thanks for listening, and we'll see you guys in the next one.